G'day guys, James from Engineering Dads here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a GUI desktop app that's going to track sports scores live. Now we're going to be modeling this off the Flash Score website that basically gets scores and passes them and returns them to a GUI desktop app that you can keep on your desktop and update it whenever you like. So keeping live scores in one space altogether. Now this is one of the benefits of using GUI apps among many. They're very versatile in what you can apply them to. You can build games with GUI apps, you can build weather stations, you can build time maps, whatever you like, given the right technology used. So this is a fairly simple project, and anyone with a basic knowledge of Python, parsing and Selenium drivers, etc. will be able to develop an app like this. So let's dive straight into it. So as you can see here on the screen, what we've got is a nice little app here that has all the teams selected. So what we're using, as said before, is the Flash Score website to basically get all the scores online. So for example, AFL being one of the scores, Rugby League, NBA, and EPL, as you can see. So here we have a series of teams that have been selected, of many that you can select from, being the whole competition. So as we update all of those scores, essentially what's happening is we've called the app to parse the website using the drivers that we'll get into in a sec. So once we've called that up to run, as you can see on the screen here, we have the latest scores that have updated for Chelsea, Miami Heat, Sydney Swans, and St George Illawarra Dragons, as we had selected in the previous tab. Now let's get into actually building this app. So what you're going to want to do is basically start with getting your team names online and making sure they match word by word. So as you can see here, we have all of our teams that have been selected. And secondly, you're going to want to make another Python file that has the links right at the end of the link. So we're going to have a common link, which I'm going to show we're going to get into, but essentially it's just going to be the flashscore.com.au link with the tail links behind it for each sport. So using those two, you then going to want to delve straight into it and import these different packages here. So the GUI app we'll be making will be run off Tkinter, which can be used for a lot of different apps. I really like Tkinter because of its simplicity, and if you know a bit of graphic design, you can play around with it, make it look quite modern and aesthetical as well. Tkinter also allows you to play with different things like grids and different sizes, tabs, scrolling buttons, and yeah, like I said, very, very simple, and you can go nuts, go berserk with it. So we're going to import Tkinter as TK. Using our teams file that I just showed you, import your four sport teams, import RE as we're going to be using compilers. You want to import TTK from Tkinter, which we'll get into in a sec. Import NumPy. Now you're going to want to use a parser. Personally, I like using Beautiful Soup. It's always worked well for me, and being someone who likes playing with numerics, it's very, very easy to create different arrays and matrices and being able to rearrange them by using Beautiful Soup, but you can even use something like RSS Feeder, which does it just as good. We're going to want to use Selenium, and then we're going to want to import WebDriver. Now, this depends on the type of browser you use. For personally, I use Google Chrome, so we're going to be using a Chrome driver, and I'll leave a link in the description to where you can download Chrome driver. It's very, very simple. Once you've downloaded it and you import it, you can use basically for any program you do. And then we're going to import our sports links as discussed before, followed by TTK themes, because I want to be able to play with the aesthetics of it like I said before, and then obviously PIL so we can use some images. So we're going to start by creating our aesthetic, our design for the app here. So we have our window, which is going to be a theme TK, and I'm going to pick the theme Breeze because that's the one that I wanted to go for this aesthetic design. There's heaps of different themes you can pick, and I'll leave a list of different themes in the description below with a link to that, with the title of Sports App by Engineering Dads and window geometry with a size of 780 by 340. So before we go into anything further, I'm just going to start by adding in a logo. So we're going to call that logo, and image open to the respective path, which I have here. Now, so that logo doesn't absolutely hog your whole app, make sure you resize it to what you want. And for the purpose of this app, I'm just going to say 100 by 100. anti-alias it. And for it to be able to work in Tkinter, you're going to want to make sure you use this bit of code, which is photo image logo. Now what we're doing is making sure we can actually display it on the app screen. And then we're going to want to pack it in. So I want to display it on the right hand side of the app. Fill both. And it gives you the option to expand, and we're going to say yes so it follows the respective size of the app. After that, we're going to want to create our tabs. Now with this, whenever you're creating tabs, you want to create a variable called tab parent, which is essentially now giving you some sort of justification, telling the app to say, hey, I'm going to have different sections of my app here. It's just basically self-explanatory as tab parent. From there, we can break down our tabs into tab 1 by using TTK frame, tab parent, TTK frame, tab parent. So we're going to have tab 1 and tab 2. Now to give those two things names, we just go add tab 1, and our first is going to be select teams, like so. Tab 2, which will show us the latest scores as such. And we're going to add this in now, but whenever you're playing with any GUI apps, especially Tkinter, you're going to want to be able to close it right at the end. Whilst ensuring your window is kept in a main loop. That simple bit of code. So now after doing that, we can run. And what we should see now is the start of our app. Yay. So select team and latest scores. Obviously there's nothing there yet because we haven't written the code, but we have an app that is ready for information to go in and ready to be absolutely cleaved. Alrighty, so once we've done that, we want to get into the contents of each tab now. So I'm going to make a new title for tab contents. And I'm going to start by working on the aesthetics of this a bit. So we're going to work on our labels here with the master label as the selector. So making sure this is in tab 1 by always having that as your first argument, and selecting the text as sports tracker team selector. Now this gives you the idea where you can play around with different fonts and background colors. So you can look up your codes online using a color coder, which I can also leave in the description below. And I've picked this color code with the foreground of the text as black. I want my font to be something I've picked as Harlow solid italic with a size of 15. And then, as I said before, the beauty about these ads is you can seriously just play with grids and pick different rows and columns. So positioning in apps is extremely simple, especially when using Tkinter. Now we're going to go ahead and add in our sub labels. And our sub labels in the first tab, you guessed it, are going to be our teams. So select EPL team as the first one. And font, I'm going to select this Times New Roman. So we're going to do that in the 0th column again. And I want to start this at row 5. And the beauty about this as well is you can use a pad X and a pad Y function. And that basically allows, what you're saying is, do not give me any other items or accessories within this range for the pad X and pad Y. There's probably a much better way of explaining that, but that's the way I understand it and how it works for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that for the next 3 sports. Alright, so let's just have a look at how that's looking now. So as you can see, we have our title and our 4 sports selections ready to go. So now we're going to go into making a combo box, which is going to allow us to have our different selections for each team and each respective sport. So I'm going to make a set of variables here. So I'm going to start by calling one of them M, which is going to be a string variable in tab 1. And then as we have 4 sports, I'm going to make another 4 variables. Of course, I'm making our little combo box here. Now, for each string variable, what you're going to want to do is set it to anything, and for the sake of this project, I'm just going to set it to the first team in the array for each respective sport. Okay, and then we're going to make the magic happen here by defining our team for each sport by using the Combobox function, of course, again with the tab as the first argument. And you can pick how wide you like it and assign the variable that we've just done as n. And then we're going to do this for the other 3 sports like so. After this, you're going to want to make your combo list. And all this is doing now is vectorizing the values for each respective sport. Using the teams that we defined in the other file known as teams. And now for the graphics part of it, I'm going to go ahead and use grid again. Now keep in mind, like I was saying before, you do have the choice of using either grid or pack. Pack is a little bit different. I personally like grid because I can kind of visualize where it's going to go, whereas pack can kind of take over and do its own thing. But it's very good if you want to get creative. I'm definitely not advising against it, just more so what I have gotten myself used to. and then the other 3 sports like so. So let's give that a look of how it's going now. Sweet, so we have all our teams in and all of our respective sports. And of course, they don't do anything, you just select them and it's as simple as that. Alrighty, so this is the fun part of when we actually go and get the sports from the website. Okay guys, so I'm gonna make a function here just so I can call it within the app, and we're gonna call it get scores. And I have used a variable s, the team that we're selecting, and the link that we have to select as well. So we're gonna have to initialize that. And we're gonna start a value for each team. And that's gonna be team get when it comes to selecting each team, depending on what sport you've chosen. And what sport you've chosen will also depend on the URL as well. And I'm just gonna get that from Flash Score straight up. So like I said before, the leading link is going to be flashscore.com.au. And now the beauty about using format is all you got to do is put these 2 brackets here and write .format and your argument on your side, which is going to be link, which we're going to get to very soon. Ensuring our syntax is correct. Now, this is where I'm going to introduce you using the Chrome driver, and we're going to do that by using the try function. So you're going to want to define driver and webdriver.chrome, and it's very important that you know where the location of the Chrome driver is, so you can just plug that straight into there. Now, for simplicity of other people using the app, my accept is going to be urging users to install Chrome driver for proceeding. And now you have the ability to use driver and then use the get sport URL, which will be defined when you call the function. Okay, now what we're going to do is define the page, and then we're going to have our soup as well, which is going to allow us to pass the page we use. Now there's different formats you can use when using Beautiful Soup, but I'm going to use the XML as I found this to be the fastest when I was starting this app, but I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. So now we're going to use the try and accept function again to activate our parser here. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with how to actually use a parser, it can be quite finicky, but I'm basically going to show you kind of how you can direct yourself through doing that here. So when you're parsing, you always have a HTML. And within HTML, you have different divisions like classes, div, and so on. So the easiest thing to do here is actually go to a web page and simply just inspect the element. And what will happen is you'll be able to see the different types here. So you've got scripts, divs, bodies, etc. So like what worked for me here was actually going into the site and finding where the scores were. So going into container and then trying to find where the scores are. So going into our table, we've got our different scores, and you can see that being highlighted on the screen. So I know now that I have to use these specific syntaxes to be able to call it in my parser. Okay, so now we're going to begin the parsing here. So simply speaking, for I'm going to call the variable game in soup.find. Now going back to the site and going into our results page as given from the links and inspecting that to find where our results start. Awesome, so my results are there. And we're going to copy that straight into the class, as we could see. If I can have the right syntax here. And we're just going to get rid of that mobile part, as that was showing the mobile version, which we don't want. Okay, so now as it's going through the results, we're going to want to make a home array, and then like so for the score, and like so for away. The reason we're going to do this is because we're going to have a nested for loop, and then we're going to call this home team in game as we just defined, and tell me all of the home teams playing here. Okay, and now this is where we're going to use our compiler because it's going to be character sensitive. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug in what the home teams are called. As you guys have already seen how you can go into the inspect element and dig out these word specific names. Alrighty, and then once you've done that, we're going to want to create a results array because we're going to end up combining this all together. But before we do that, there's just a couple of housekeeping we're going to need to do. And I want to define the other three sports as separate scores here. Now, the reason being is when I looked inside of the HTML for this website, it changed for the other three sports. And now I know what you're thinking, why didn't I just do this commonly for the three sports and then do a separate special one for EPL? And the reason was when I designed this app, I started with EPL, but for efficiency, I would have done it the other way around. And now we're just going to make a nested while loop, sorry, an if while loop. And I'm going to show you why in a sec. So what I'm doing here is defining the scores themselves based on what's given in the HTML page. And I'll show you guys what I mean in just a sec. So my score here is going to equal my new AFL score in the array that I've just defined. Alrighty, so why did I do that? It seemed like a waste of time. Well, really it wasn't, because the app wouldn't have worked without doing this. As you can see, it's already got within its span 1-1, and that's how I want to represent it in the live app. Now, if I take you guys over to the AFL, for example, okay, there are our two scores, right? They're not given in the same span. So what I've just done in the code is actually put them together in the same span. So when it comes to matrixizing these soon and putting them in the same array, it's much, much easier. Now I'm just going to do the exact same for the other three sports. And then combining that all together, I'm going to make a variable res. And this is going to bring everything together in the results page. So now that's combining all our results together. And then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make a new variable and call that results. Sorry, result. And that's going to be my NumPy array that actually combines it together using the results that were passed from the HTML. So now rather than playing with data online, I'm playing with numeric values that I've created myself, which is much easier because I can do exactly what I want with them. And I'm just going to transpose that so I can read it much easier. When I go to pass it, but go to scan that. So we're going to try and find our game now, because don't forget, even though we've extracted each game, the app doesn't know where each home team is, where each score is. So I'm going to have a look at the team val that I've defined before, which is essentially the team you select when you go into the app. So if we're able to find that value of the team, we're going to get the score of the home and the away team by using the little squeeze function here. And make sure we transpose that so it reads it correctly. And then select that game. I'm going to call this game select. And then join those two together. And if it successfully finds it, we're going to break out of that loop because we've got what we want. And now we're going to use our S variable that we talked about earlier, which will feed back into the GUI app, where the text equals game select. Now, we can finally go back to the except part of that try function, and it's going to be called no team information is currently available. And we can finally get out of that driver, and the parsing has done the hard yards. Now going back to the app, we're going to want to make our tab 2 contents now. So doing this for each respective sport, we're going to call this EPL score label with our first argument as tab 2. And the text is going to be latest EPL score. And then the score entry is going to be something separate and right next to it. And initially, what that's going to be is please select team in the first tab, right? Because obviously nothing's going to be selected at first. And I'm going to put a white background behind that. And then we're just going to position that now using our grids again. I think I've given away, that's my favorite part of this. TK label, pos equals EPL score entry grid. I want that in the 0th row, first column. Pad X, let's do 15 and 15. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for every single sport like so, and then we're going to move that down a row for each of them. Alrighty, so now that we have those in, what you will see is please select team in tab 1 for each of them. Okay. So now once we've done that, we're going to actually make this thing come to life. So we're going to use a binder function, right? And the beauty about this is you can use binders to detect when combo boxes are selected. So we're going to use these two arrows here and write combo box selected. And I'm going to use a lambda here because we're not using any built-in functions. We're using functions that we've built. Therefore, needing to use a lambda function. And it's going to be get scores, EPL score entry. EPL team, EPL link. Now, let's clear this up with how it works with the function that we've designed. So, EPL score entry is our argument for S, and sconfig is changing it to the game that's been selected, where the game that's selected was putting the scores together, or sconfig would say no team information is currently available. This would happen for the first row being the EPL team, and we're going to go ahead and do this like so for the other three sports. Beauty. Now we're going to make two buttons here. First being an update button, and I want to have that back in the first tab. Text is update. The command, of course, lambda again. And now what I want it to do is to run every single function. Well, not every single function, but the same function for every single sport. And then lastly, we're going to have our finish button. In other words, exiting the app. With the command to quit the window, defined by window.quit. Put that right below the update button, and you're going to see padding come to life here. Alrighty guys, now once we've done all that, we're going to go ahead and test the final app here, see if everything is working correctly, and hopefully it is. So we have our EPL team. Let's select Liverpool. And before we go ahead and select any others, let's make sure that worked. So no team information is currently available. Well, that either hints that we've made a mistake in the code, or that, like it suggests, there's no team information currently available. Which either means the season has stopped or the score isn't available, but I suspect the first, and that mistake has been made. So even now, just looking here, I can see that my result is in gray, and that's suspicious as to why. It's probably just a typo. We just need to have, whoops, not a result in there. Oop, I think we've got it here. So let's stop that and let's try it again. Let's go Liverpool again. And sweet, all our teams are there. Alrighty guys, so that's it for me today. That's basically a simple way of making a GUI app that tracks your sports for you. Like I said earlier in the video, many different ways you could have done this. Please leave a comment below if there's any other way you would have done this, or just simply leave a comment below what you would have thought and if you would use it. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.